Amidst a sky ablaze, Chloe kissed my cold body as we sank into a sea of fire together. My soul, however, floated in mid-air, watching helplessly. In that moment, I finally saw the depths of Chloe's love, and as memories of the past flooded back, I wept with regret. Chloe had married me through an arrangement between our families. After the wedding, she was utterly devoted to me, her love absolute. If I wanted the stars, she would never have settled for giving me the moon. I once casually mentioned liking a watch worth a fortune, and it was on my nightstand the next day. When I was sick, she would stay up all night, watching over me. But I despised her. I refused to share a bed with her, never accompanied her to social events, and frequented clubs, all to deliberately humiliate her. I even fell for the manipulations of my first love, Olivia Vance, and ran away with her. I never imagined that Olivia didn't love me at all. She had only schemed to win my trust because the Vance and Sterling families were old rivals. She had me kidnapped and used my life as leverage against Chloe. Chloe, send one of your fingers every day, or I'll kill Ethan. Chloe said nothing. She just sent Olivia a finger every day. On the 10th day, when I saw the final one arrive, still bearing her wedding ring, I completely broke down. I couldn't let her go on like this, so I bit my own tongue and ended my life. After I died, my soul floated in the air, watching as the typically composed and aloof Chloe lost her mind at the sight of my corpse. She personally shattered every bone in Olivia's body, her eyes deadened to the sound of her screams. Finally, she abandoned her billion-dollar fortune and the entire Sterling empire, choosing instead to embrace my body and walk into the flames. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the first year of my marriage to Chloe. I was ecstatic, vowing to love Chloe with everything I had this time. I deleted all of Olivia's contact information, made Chloe breakfast every morning, and waited up for her, no matter how late she worked. She was my entire world, but she was different now. The tenderness was gone. She stopped coming home every night and even started seeing a college student on the side. A few days ago, when her lover needed an urgent liver transplant, Chloe had my mother forcibly taken for the surgery. On the day of the surgery, I knelt and begged until my forehead bled, but she had me locked in a room. 3 days later, the operation was a success. Chloe stood before me, her gaze as cold and distant as if I were a complete stranger. "The surgery was a success," she said. "I've arranged for someone to look after your mother. I need to stay at the hospital with Leo for a few days, so I won't be home." I stared at the woman who had once walked through fire for me. As she turned to leave, I couldn't stop myself from asking in a raw voice, "Chloe, you loved me so much. Why did you just stop?" Chloe paused but didn't turn around. "We have an arranged marriage, Ethan. When did I ever say I loved you?" The moment the door clicked shut, I slid to the cold floor, tears streaming down my face. Never loved me? How could that be possible? In my past life, she loved me so fiercely. Now, she would sacrifice my own mother to save her lover. If she doesn't love me in this life, then I have to let her go. I stumbled to my feet and dragged myself to the hospital. When I pushed open her door, my mother was asleep, her face a deathly pale. Her breathing was faint but steady beneath the oxygen mask. I stood by her bed, looking at her frail form in the hospital gown, a lump forming in my throat. "Ethan." I whipped my head around to see my father standing in the doorway, looking exhausted from travel. His suit was wrinkled and his tie was crooked. He had obviously rushed back from overseas. "Dad," I choked out, my legs giving way as I collapsed to my knees. "This is all my fault." My father rushed over and pulled me to my feet. "Don't be ridiculous. The floor is freezing. What are you doing?" His hand was rough but warm, and I could feel a slight tremor in his grip. "This isn't your fault. How could this possibly be your fault?" He sighed, patting my back gently. "It was Chloe who approached us about the marriage. She said she'd had a crush on you for years. How did things change so drastically?" It was true. Everyone knew she loved me. Why was this life so different? I took a deep breath. "Dad, I've made up my mind. I want to divorce Chloe. Since the family business is already moving overseas, let's all leave this place for good." My father fell silent. His eyes moved between me and my mother in her hospital bed. After a long moment, he finally asked, "Are you sure you have no feelings left for her?" My nails dug into my palms, but I felt nothing. After what she did to Mom, how could I possibly still love her? He was quiet for another moment before letting out a heavy sigh, as if he'd made a decision. "All right then, we'll leave." He patted my shoulder. "Go handle the arrangements. I'll stay here." I nodded, my eyes red, and left the room. The immigration process went smoothly. As I stepped out of the building, the bright sunlight made my eyes ache. Standing on the curb, the world felt unreal. A moment later, I heard the screech of tires, and before I could even turn, a massive force sent me flying. I woke to a wave of excruciating pain. The first thing I saw was Chloe's cold face looming over me. She looked down at me, her expression one of undisguised disgust. "Ethan, did you do this on purpose?" she sneered, her voice like ice. "Did you see Leo get into a car accident and decide to copy him? Let me make this clear. We have an arranged marriage. There are no feelings between us. Trying to imitate him is pointless. I don't have time to look after you." I opened my mouth to explain, but the door to my room swung open. "Ms. Sterling, the soup you requested," her assistant said, respectfully handing her a container. Chloe took it, glanced inside, and her brow furrowed. "Why is it seafood chowder?" she asked, her voice sharp with annoyance. "He's allergic to seafood. Go get something else." Her words struck me like a bolt of lightning. In my past life, she only found out I was allergic to seafood in our second year of marriage, after I nearly went into anaphylactic shock. But in this life, we've only been married for 1 year. Thinking about her strange behavior lately, her sudden coldness toward me, her bizarre affection for Leo, a wild thought seized me. I couldn't stop shaking. "Chloe," I stammered, "were you reborn too?" Chloe frowned. "Reborn? What are you talking about?" I stared into her eyes. "Then, how did you know I'm allergic to seafood?" "Your parents came to see me a while ago," she said, her expression unreadable, her eyelashes perfectly still. "They asked me to be nicer to you and gave me a notebook with all your preferences and allergies." I glanced at it before I threw it out. Was I just overthinking things? Just then, a nurse came in. "Ms. Sterling, Leo is awake. He's asking for you." At that, Chloe left without a backward glance, not even looking in my direction. I was in the hospital for 3 days, and Chloe never visited. Every time a nurse came to change my bandages, the pity in her eyes felt like a silent mockery of my situation. On the morning of the 4th day, I checked myself out. The immigration papers were finalized. All that was left was the last step, the divorce. I sat at my desk, carefully writing out the divorce papers. The terms were simple. I didn't want anything from her. I just wanted to be free. My phone buzzed. It was a new Facebook post from Leo. The picture showed Chloe at her desk, with Leo standing behind her, his arms wrapped around her shoulders. The caption read, "Someone told me she never lets non-employees in her office, but she made an exception for me today." My finger hovered over the screen. In my past life, Chloe had broken her own rules for me countless times. She hated spicy food but ate it with me until she made herself sick. She was a neat freak but would carry me home when I was drunk. She hated the spotlight but agreed to a magazine interview for my sake. I took a deep breath, pushing the memories away, and grabbed the divorce papers on my way out the door. The Sterling Group headquarters was as imposing as ever. On the elevator ride up, I rehearsed how I would ask for the divorce. As I neared her office, Chloe's assistant walked out holding a stack of files. "Mr. Hayes, are you here to see Ms. Sterling?" The assistant seemed surprised to see me. "Yes," I said, tightening my grip on the manila envelope. "I need her signature on something." His eyes lingered on my pale face for a second. "I was just heading in. I can take that for you." I hesitated, then handed him the envelope. "Thanks, I appreciate it." The assistant took the envelope, tucked it into his stack of files, and knocked lightly on her door. The moment it opened, my blood ran cold. Chloe was kneeling on the floor, gently massaging Leo's shoulders as he sat on the couch. "Ms. Sterling, these files need your signature." The assistant's voice made Chloe look up. Distracted by her massage, she signed the papers without a second glance. I stood in the doorway, my fists clenched. In my past life, when I'd sprained my ankle playing basketball, she had knelt just like that, so carefully applying ointment. I remember how her brow was furrowed with concern, how she was almost too afraid to touch me. A moment later, the assistant came out and handed the envelope back to me. "It's signed, sir." I looked down at her flowing signature on the divorce papers, and my eyes began to sting. I mumbled a thank you and turned to go. While waiting for the elevator, I called my lawyer. "We've both signed. How long until the decree is finalized?" "Sir, it just needs to go through the 1-month mandatory waiting period." I nodded. Just as I hung up, I heard Leo's voice behind me. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" I spun around to see Chloe drop Leo's hand and stride toward me, her face grim. "Who said you could come here?" she demanded, grabbing my wrist. "How many times do I have to tell you? This is an arranged marriage. I stay out of your life, you stay out of mine." I pulled my arm away. "I get it. It won't happen again." As the tension mounted, Leo quickly stepped in, putting an arm around Chloe's shoulders. "Chloe, don't be like that. He's still your husband." Then he turned to me. "Ethan, perfect timing. Chloe and I are heading to an auction. You should come with us." "I still haven't properly thanked your mother for saving my life." "That's not necessary." I cut in. My mother doesn't need anything from you. Leo's eyes immediately welled up. But I'll feel terrible if you don't come. Chloe's voice was cold. Just go. Don't make a scene. Her gaze was like ice, a stark contrast to the gentle way she used to look at me in our past life. I suddenly felt exhausted, too tired to even argue. In the end, they dragged me along to the auction. At the auction, the sound of bidding filled the air. Chloe raised her paddle with an elegant calm, each of her bids drawing murmurs from the surrounding crowd. 50 million. A bid of 50 million from Ms. Sterling, the auctioneer cried excitedly. The sapphire goes to Ms. Sterling. Leo, sitting beside her, beamed like a victor. Chloe, it's beautiful. I'm glad you like it, Chloe said, gently brushing the hair from his forehead. She's way too good to that boy toy of hers, someone whispered from the row behind us. Spoils him completely. That's nothing, another voice added. Last month, he mentioned offhand that he liked some island in the Caribbean, worth hundreds of millions. She had the deed transferred to his name the next day. I gripped my own bidding paddle, my knuckles turning white. In my past life, Chloe had spoiled me just like that. Now, that same affection was being lavished on another man. Ethan, Leo suddenly leaned over. See anything you like? I can have Chloe buy it for you. I shook my head curtly. No thanks. Well, let's see what's next, he pressed on. Maybe you'll like the next piece. The auctioneer banged his gavel. Our next item is quite unique. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screen. The moment the large screen lit up, the room erupted in gasps. It was a photo of Leo's face, bruised and swollen, being ground into a wet bathroom floor. The high-resolution close-up captured his humiliation in vivid detail. My God, he looks like he's been through hell. That's just vile. I wonder if she knows about this. The whispers filled the auction hall. My God, that's disgusting. I wonder if Miss Sterling knows about his past. The whispers filled the auction hall. The color drained from Leo's face, leaving it a ghostly white. Turn it off! Turn it off! He screamed, scrambling to his feet, shaking uncontrollably. That's not me. He whirled on me, tears streaming down his face. Ethan, do you hate me this much? Did you have to humiliate me like this? You're trying to drive me to my death. With that, he ran out of the room. Chloe's expression was terrifying. I'm buying all of those photos. Take them down now, she commanded, her sharp gaze sweeping the room. If a single word of this gets out, there will be consequences. Finally, her icy gaze landed on me. You just wait. My mind was blank as I drove back to the house, a chill running through me. I had no idea how those photos got to the auction. I didn't like Leo and I could be a jerk, but I would never humiliate someone like that. Besides, I'd never even seen those pictures before. But Chloe would never believe me. She'd just think I was lying. I waited on the sofa all night. Just as dawn broke, the front door was kicked open. Chloe stormed in, radiating fury, her eyes bloodshot. She lunged at me, her hands closing around my throat with suffocating force. Do you have any idea that Leo tried to drown himself? She rasped. If I hadn't gotten there in time, he'd be dead right now. It wasn't me, I choked out. I didn't leak those photos. Not you. She laughed coldly, releasing her grip. Are you trying to tell me he released them himself? I was speechless. Before I could say anything, Chloe cut me off. This is an arranged marriage. We are supposed to stay out of each other's lives. But you keep hurting the person I love, and for that you have to pay. Her words were a knife to my heart. In my past life, she had protected me with that same ferocity. Now, she was protecting someone else. Go to the hospital right now and apologize to Leo. My eyes burned with unshed tears, but I met her gaze defiantly. I did nothing wrong. I have nothing to apologize for. Chloe let out a cold laugh and snapped her fingers. 2 bodyguards entered and grabbed me. Take him to the basement, she ordered without turning around. Let him go when he's ready to admit he was wrong. The basement? I stared at her in disbelief. She was going to have me tortured just to make me apologize to Leo? Before I could process what was happening, I was dragged into the cold basement and strapped to a metal table. The bodyguards efficiently bound my wrists and ankles, the cold leather biting into my skin. The moment they flipped the switch, a current shot through me. My body arched like a fish out of water, only to be slammed back down by the restraints. I bit my lip so hard it bled, the metallic taste flooding my mouth. Are you going to apologize? It felt like 1,000 needles coursing through my veins, stabbing their way from my fingertips to my heart. An inhuman sound escaped my throat as I bit down on my lip, tasting blood again. I shook my head. I did nothing wrong. Why should I apologize? The current surged again, stronger this time. My vision blurred, and my muscles seized uncontrollably. A third time, a fourth, a fifth, a 10th. Stop! I finally screamed, breaking down completely, tears and blood mixing on my face. I was wrong. I'll apologize. I'll do it. I was dragged to the VIP wing of the hospital. Finally ready to admit you were wrong? Chloe asked, watching me with cold eyes from her seat beside Leo's bed. My legs were still trembling, the aftershocks of the electricity making each step feel like walking on knives. I had to lean against the wall to stay upright as waves of darkness washed over my vision. I'm sorry, I rasped, my voice almost unrecognizable. I shouldn't have leaked those photos of you. Leo, propped up against the headboard, looked pale. Ethan, normally I'd let it go, but you went too far this time. An apology like that isn't enough. Chloe immediately wrapped her arms around him, her voice impossibly soft. Then what do you want, my love? He should at least get on his knees if he's really sincere. I snapped my head up, my eyes meeting Chloe's frozen stare. Are you not going to kneel? Or do you want to go back to the basement? A tremor went through me, and my knees hit the hard floor. I'm sorry. Only then did Leo give a reluctant grunt. Fine, I forgive you. As I left the room, my vision went black, and I nearly collapsed. I had to lean against the wall for a long time before I could manage to drag myself away. That night, Chloe brought Leo back to our home. Leo's mental state is fragile. He'll be staying with us for a while, she announced, her tone casual as if discussing the weather. I was too tired to argue. Do what you want. The divorce is already in motion. This place won't be my home for much longer. Chloe frowned, seeming to sense something was wrong. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, Leo tugged on her sleeve. Chloe, I'm hungry. What would you like? I'll have the staff make something. It's so late, let's not bother them, Leo said with an embarrassed smile, though his eyes were fixed on me. Ethan's right here, isn't he? He can make it. Chloe looked at me. Did you hear him? How ironic. The legal husband, reduced to cooking for his wife's lover. I managed a bitter smile and walked numbly toward the kitchen. I stared blankly at the bubbling, boiling oil in the pot. Is dinner ready yet? Leo's voice startled me from behind. Almost, I said without turning. He leaned in to look, then frowned. Ethan, is this it? There's barely anything here. Before I could respond, he grabbed my wrist and shoved my hand into the boiling pot. A searing pain shot up my arm. I instinctively recoiled, splashing hot oil everywhere. By the time I wrenched my hand free, the back of it was already red and blistering. Leo, meanwhile, deliberately splashed a few drops of the hot liquid onto his own arm and then threw himself to the floor with a dramatic cry. What happened? Chloe cried, rushing into the kitchen. Leo's eyes instantly filled with tears. Chloe, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have asked Ethan to cook for me. I made him angry, and he deliberately threw the hot soup on me. Chloe's face darkened. She lunged forward and seized my wrist. Is this never going to end? Did you listen to anything I said to you before? Pale with pain, I held up my swollen, blistered hand. Chloe, I choked out. Look, just look and see who's hurt worse. Chloe froze. I didn't do it. Leo quickly defended himself. Chloe, he threw it on me first. He only burned himself because he was afraid you'd blame him. My eyes burning, I said slowly. There are security cameras. All you have to do is check the footage. The color drained from Leo's face. Before he could speak, Chloe cut in sharply. There's no need. I trust Leo. He would never do something like that. Leo visibly relaxed and shot me a triumphant, defiant look. My heart felt like it was being ripped in two, one half searing with the pain from my hand, the other half aching with a much deeper wound. You never learn, do you? Chloe said coldly. Since you enjoy burning people so much, let's see how you like it. She snapped her fingers, and two bodyguards stepped forward, grabbing my uninjured hand. I struggled, horrified. Chloe, you're going to regret this. Before the words were even out of my mouth, a bodyguard mercilessly plunged my hand into the boiling pot. A blood-curdling scream tore through the house. When I came to, I was in my bed. Both of my hands were wrapped in thick gauze, and waves of burning pain pulsed through them. Sir, you're awake. Our housekeeper, Mrs. Davis, said from my bedside, her eyes red. I'll call Miss Sterling and tell her to come home. Don't, I said, shaking my head weakly. She's the one who ordered this. Mrs. Davis gasped. How could that be? She used to follow you to and from school every day, just to make sure you were safe. A tear slipped silently from the corner of my eye. See? Everyone said she loved me, so why did she suddenly stop? While I was recovering, I saw their life together unfold on Leo's Facebook page. Chloe took him to fashion shows in Paris, rented out an entire amusement park just for him, and even arranged a private fireworks show for his birthday. A week later, Chloe finally came back with Leo. The first thing she said to me was, Ethan, Leo's birthday is soon. You're going to plan his party. Consider it compensation for what you did to him. I was too exhausted to argue. I didn't want any more complications before I left, so I just nodded. Fine. I barely slept the week I planned that party. With my hands still healing, I personally selected every flower arrangement and approved every dish on the menu. The staff looked at me with pity, but none of them dared to help. On the night of the party, the entire Sterling estate was lit up. Guests whispered amongst themselves. The actual husband throwing a birthday party for his wife's boy toy. I've never seen anything like it. She must be serious about this one. Look at those gifts. Any one of them is worth a fortune. I stood in a corner, ignoring the chatter. My eyes were fixed on Chloe, who was center stage in a black mermaid gown. She kept checking her watch, clearly waiting for Leo to arrive. The minutes ticked by, but Leo was nowhere to be seen. Chloe's face grew increasingly grim until she finally sent her assistant to look for him. "Miss Sterling," the assistant cried, running back in a panic with a letter in his hand. "Leo's gone. He only left this." Chloe snatched the letter from his hand. Her expression changed as she read it. Then, she threw it in my face. "Ethan," she hissed, her voice tight with rage, "you had better explain this." The letter fluttered to my feet. I picked it up with a trembling hand. It was written in Leo's elegant script. "Chloe, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I love you, and I wanted to spend my life with you, but Ethan threatened my parents' lives. I had no choice but to leave. We can never see each other again." "It wasn't me," I said numbly, handing the letter back. "I would never do something like that." "You always say that," she snarled, her hands closing around my throat again. "But you always manage to do it anyway." I struggled to breathe but held her gaze. "I really don't know anything about this." But she didn't believe me. She was convinced I had driven Leo away. To force his location out of me, she had my parents taken to the roof of the Sterling Group tower. They were dangled over the edge, 100 meters in the air, held only by a single thin rope. "Tell me where Leo is." Chloe's voice was glacial. Her hands were on my neck, forcing me to look at the edge of the roof. "Tell me where he is, and your parents live." I never imagined she loved him this much, that she would be willing to kill my parents for him. My voice was a shattered wreck. "I really don't know. I don't even know when he left. Chloe, please, let my parents go. They're innocent." But Chloe just laughed coldly and gave a signal. A bodyguard pulled out a knife and began to slowly saw at the rope. The grating sound of the blade against the fibers grated on my very soul. "I really don't know." I slammed to my knees, hitting my head on the concrete. "Chloe, I swear, I don't know. If I had anything to do with this, may I be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Is that enough for you?" The bodyguard kept cutting. Chloe leaned down, grabbing the back of my neck. "Last chance. Where is he?" I looked up at her, my eyes filled with despair, and for a moment, the world swam. Was this cold, heartless woman really the same one who had died for me in another life? Just as the rope was about to give way, a bodyguard burst onto the roof. "Ms. Sterling, we found him. He's at the airport." Chloe instantly released me and ran off without a second glance. As the bodyguard scrambled to pull my parents back to safety, the rope was hanging by a single thread. I crawled to them, and only when I felt their cold hands in mine did I finally let myself break down. The raw, deep marks on my mother's wrists, the bloody scrapes on my father's back, each one was a knife twisting in my heart. In the ambulance, my mother wiped my tears with a trembling hand. "Ethan," she whispered, "she used to get upset if you even got a paper cut." At that moment, my eyes burned, and I finally broke into heart-wrenching sobs. The wail of the ambulance siren cut through the night. I sat on a bench in the hospital hallway, my hands clenched into fists. The doctor had just told me my parents were only suffering from shock and were otherwise unharmed. I breathed a long sigh of relief and gently closed their room door. "Chloe, hang on, it's all my fault." From the end of the hall, I heard Leo's anguished sobs. I looked up to see paramedics rushing past with a gurney. Chloe was on it, her clothes soaked with blood, her face as white as a sheet. Leo was clutching her hand, sobbing hysterically. "I'm so sorry, this is all my fault. You went through so much to stop me from leaving, and I caused a scene. I even grabbed the wheel." Chloe weakly lifted her hand to wipe his tears away. "As long as you don't leave me," she whispered, "I'll do anything." My heart seized. I turned and walked away quickly. I couldn't watch anymore. I didn't dare. I spent the next few days at the hospital with my parents. Every morning, I'd make them a nourishing broth and watch them eat. I could sometimes overhear the nurses gossiping in the hallway. "Miss Sterling is just so devoted to him. She's seriously injured herself, but she still spends all her time trying to cheer him up." "I know, right? I heard he mentioned wanting a cake from that bakery downtown in the middle of the night. and she got right out of bed and drove there to get it for him. My parents watched me with worried eyes, but I just kept peeling an apple, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. Ethan, my mother started, then trailed off. I'm fine, Mom, I said, cutting the apple into slices. I don't love her anymore. It was the truth. The moment she sent my mother into that operating room, any love I had for her died. Now all I wanted was to take my parents and leave this place for good. A week later, my parents were stable. Ethan, we're feeling better now. You should go home and pack, my father said, patting my shoulder. We're leaving soon and we probably won't be back. We need to tie up all the loose ends. I nodded. Back at the house, I was halfway through packing when the door opened. Chloe stood in the doorway, her expression dark. Leo has been through a lot lately. Go to the church and get him a blessed charm, she ordered, her tone leaving no room for argument, as if she were speaking to a servant. Before, I would have refused. Now I just nodded numbly. Okay, I didn't dare defy her. The last time I said no, she almost had my parents killed. I couldn't risk that again. The old church was shrouded in morning mist. I knelt on every one of the 99 stone steps leading up to it, my knees raw and bleeding by the time I reached the top, but I felt no pain. As I got to my feet, my eyes fell on an old wishing tree, its branches covered in red ribbons. Curiosity drew me closer, and as I read the words written on them, I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I wish for Ethan's happiness and safety. Chloe prays for Ethan's health. Chloe wishes Ethan would fall in love with me. Every ribbon was a testament to the love Chloe once had for me. The oldest one dated back to high school. The most recent was from just before our wedding. I gave a bitter laugh and went inside. I got the charm for Leo, and on an impulse, I got a pair of charms for a happy marriage as well. Before I left, I borrowed a pair of scissors from the priest, went back to the tree, and cut down every single one of her ribbons, burning them to ash in a nearby brazier. Sir, what are you doing? A young acolyte asked, confused. Cutting old ties, I replied quietly. When I got back, I gave Chloe both the charm for Leo and the ones for marriage. What are these? She asked, frowning at the marriage charms. They're for a happy marriage, I said, my voice sincere, my gaze steady. I hope you and Leo will be happy together. Chloe studied me for a long moment. Do you really mean that? I nodded. Of course. She frowned, watching me for a while longer as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just turned and walked away. A few days later was the Sterling family's annual dinner. I didn't want to go, but I hadn't seen Chloe's grandfather in a long time, and I felt I should say goodbye before I left. So, I got dressed and went. I had just arrived at the family estate when Chloe walked in, holding Leo's hand in front of everyone. Bringing her lover to a family dinner was a blatant insult, but I found that I no longer cared. The pain was gone. I ignored the whispers and went straight to her grandfather's study. Grandfather, Chloe and I are getting a divorce, I said as soon as I walked in, telling him that I was leaving the country. Hearing this, Mr. Sterling sat bolt upright and took my hand. My boy, are you angry with her? Listen to me, she truly cares for you. This business with the other man, it must be some kind of misunderstanding. Grandfather, I said with a sad smile, please don't try to change my mind. I've thought this through. After everything she's done to me lately, it doesn't matter how she feels about Leo. There's no future for us. Sensing the finality in my tone, he sighed deeply. So be it. It's her loss. Ethan, you remember this. Even if you're no longer my grandson-in-law, you will always be a cherished grandson to me. And as long as I'm alive, that boy will never be welcome in this house. A lump formed in my throat. In my past life, he had defended me just as fiercely. You should get some rest, grandfather, I said, getting up to leave. I stood to go, stepping out for a moment to get him a glass of milk. As I returned, just before I knocked, I heard a muffled thud from inside the room. You old fool. It was Leo's voice, coming through the partially open door. You think you can stop me from marrying Chloe? I'll kill you. My blood ran cold. I threw the door open to see Leo smothering Mr. Sterling with a pillow. The old man's hands were feebly scratching at the sheets, his movements growing weaker. What are you doing? I yelled, shoving Leo away from the bed. The pillow dropped to the floor. Mr. Sterling's face was a deathly shade of blue, and he was unconscious. Somebody, call an ambulance. My shouts brought everyone running. Chloe was the first one in the room, and the color drained from her face when she saw the scene. Grandfather, she cried, helping him up and rushing for the door. As she passed me, her look was colder than ice. The hospital corridor was bathed in a harsh, white light. The operating room light stayed on all night. I sat on a bench, unable to stop my hands from shaking. Leo stood beside Chloe, shooting me hateful looks from time to time. Just before dawn, the doctor finally emerged. Miss Sterling, he was without oxygen for too long. It's very likely he'll be in a vegetative state. Chloe slammed her fist against the wall, her knuckles splitting open and bleeding. In the private room, Chloe looked from me to Leo, her face a grim mask. What happened? It was him, Leo shrieked, pointing at me. He tried to kill your grandfather. When I walked in, he was smothering him with a pillow. I stared at him in disbelief. What did you just say? It's the truth, Leo wailed, putting on a pitiful act. Chloe, you have no idea. He almost killed me, too. Chloe's gaze grew colder until it felt like a shard of ice piercing my heart. Ethan, grandfather was so good to you. How could you? It wasn't me, I said, my voice shaking. It was Leo. I saw him. Shut up, Chloe snapped. You are going to pay for this. She snapped her fingers and 2 bodyguards seized me. Chloe, I struggled against them. Please, just believe me this once. Chloe gave a cold laugh. Take him to the amusement park. In the pre-dawn chill of late autumn, the amusement park was deserted. I was dragged to the base of the tallest drop tower, the cold wind making me tremble. Strap him in, Chloe commanded coldly. My face went white. Chloe, you know I'm terrified of heights. That's exactly why I'm doing this. To teach you a lesson, she said, fastening the safety harness herself. I'll let you down when you decide to tell the truth. The ride slowly climbed, and I squeezed my eyes shut. By the time we reached the top, I was shaking like a leaf. The sudden drop, the feeling of weightlessness, it felt like my heart stopped. I screamed, the wind whipping the tears from my eyes. Once, twice, 3 times. As the first light of dawn appeared, Chloe finally stopped the ride. I was barely conscious when they unstrapped me. Ready to talk? She asked, looking down at me. I opened my mouth, and a spray of blood came out before I passed out completely. In the haze, I thought I heard Chloe calling my name, but then everything went black. The sharp smell of antiseptic made my temples throb. I opened my eyes to see Chloe standing by my bed, holding 3 plane tickets. Ethan, you've been nothing but trouble lately, she said, her face cold as she placed the tickets on the nightstand. First with Leo and now with my grandfather. I don't want to see you. Take your parents and go abroad for a while to cool off. When you've come to your senses, I'll arrange for your return. I stared at the tickets, a sense of absurdity washing over me. In my past life, she died for me. In this one, she couldn't wait to send me to the other side of the world. I said nothing, just quietly took the tickets. My compliance seemed to bother her. You're just going to go? She asked, frowning. You have nothing to say? I slowly looked up at her. I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to tell her she was wrong to trust Leo, that she had thrown my love away, that her grandfather had been framed. But in the end, I just shook my head. Miss Sterling, a nurse said, knocking softly on the door. Leo is complaining of chest pains. He's been asking for you. I know. Tell him I'll be there soon, Chloe replied. She turned back to me, her voice cold. I'm taking you to the airport myself to make sure you don't try to run. On the way to the airport, I sent a quiet text to my parents. Mom, Dad, bring my divorce decree. Meet me at the airport. We're leaving right away. After sending the text, I glanced at Chloe's reflection in the window. Her expression was completely detached. When I first came back to this life, I was so happy, so desperate to make it up to her, to give her all the love I had. I followed her around like a lost puppy. I used to love watching her drive. Even the way her fingers gripped the steering wheel seemed impossibly attractive. Now, looking at her, I felt nothing at all. We're here, she said, stopping the car. I'll walk you inside. The terminal was bustling with people. Chloe had intended to watch me go through security, but then her phone rang. It was Leo. Her voice instantly softened as she answered. Don't worry, I'm coming right back. She hung up without another glance in my direction and hurried away. I stood and watched her disappear into the crowd before I finally went to find my parents. Ethan, here's the divorce decree, my father said, handing me the document. I took it, a smile of relief finally spreading across my face. I took the 3 tickets to Paris that Chloe had given me, tore them to shreds, and threw them in the nearest trash can. Then I walked to the counter and bought 3 tickets to Switzerland. Mom, Dad, let's go. In the fading light, the 3 of us walked toward the gate, determined not to look back. Meanwhile, Chloe raced back to the hospital. She had just stepped out of the elevator on her way to Leo's room when a breaking news alert flashed across a nearby television screen. Breaking news. Flight MU-587 from New York to Paris has crashed shortly after takeoff. There are no survivors among the 132 passengers and crew on board. Chloe stopped in her tracks, her blood running cold. MU-587. Wasn't that the flight she had booked for me? Her phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. The special ringtone she had set just for Leo was still vibrating. An hour ago, the melody had sounded sweet. Now, every note was a sharp spike of pain. Her eyes burned. The afterimage of the headline seemed to melt before her, the letters turning to hot tar and pouring into her mind. Flight MU-587 crashed 3 minutes after takeoff. No survivors. Crashed. No survivors. He was dead. Ethan was dead. No, couldn't be. Just an hour ago, she had taken me to the airport herself. She remembered my voice, the look in my eyes, the color of my shirt. How could someone so alive just be gone? No, he had to be alive. She scrambled to pick up her phone, her fumbling fingers tapping frantically at the screen. Took her a full minute to unlock it. Staring at the word crash on the news report, she finally realized she was trembling. She didn't remember running out of the hospital or getting into her car. All she knew was the dark, rainy night, her black Maybach speeding down the highway, her foot pressed to the floor, her bloodshot eyes staring straight ahead. Faster. She had to go faster. In the early hours of the morning, the airport was packed with people, a chaotic mess of weeping and wailing. Why did this happen? Give me back my family. The overwhelming grief of the crowd felt like an invisible hand, squeezing the air from her lungs. She pushed her way through the throng, the scene unfolding in slow motion. People were fighting, screaming, their faces all twisted into the same mask of unbearable agony. She fought her way to the airline counter. She tried to speak to the agent, her voice raw, but no sound came out. "Ma'am, can you tell me the name of the passenger you're looking for?" the agent asked loudly. The word passenger hit her like a physical blow, making her head spin and her ears ring. She gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles turning white. Ethan Hayes is my family." Fearing the agent hadn't heard her, she repeated, "Ethan Hayes is my family." She had so many questions. Had the plane really crashed? Was everyone really gone? Was he really dead? But in that moment, she couldn't form the words. She was like a puppet, numbly answering their questions, doing whatever they told her to. Finally, an agent handed her a form. "This is the confirmation of death for Mr. Hayes. We need your signature here." A piece of paper with my black and white photo on it was placed in front of her. She stared at it, trying to focus on the words, but no matter how many times she blinked, the text remained a blur. Panicked, she grabbed the arm of the person next to her. "Excuse me, can you please read this for me?" The man was clearly angry himself, but as he read the paper, his expression softened into one of pity. "I'm so sorry," he said. "It says your husband. He was on the flight." A metallic taste filled Chloe's mouth. The words echoed in her mind. She stumbled backward until she hit a pillar and slid to the floor, her strength gone. A small, animal-like whimper escaped her lips, a sound so foreign and full of pain it felt like it belonged to someone else. The rest was a blur. Like the other grieving families, she numbly signed papers and collected his personal effects. Except there were none. All the authorities had recovered from his seat was a small amount of ash, which they had solemnly placed in a small urn. After confirming the identification, she signed for it, and the box was placed in her hands. Like a soulless doll, she clutched the urn and walked out of the airport. Staff members offered their condolences, but she didn't seem to hear them. She dragged her feet as if they were made of lead, got into her car, and numbly started the drive home. When she arrived home, a group of people was waiting for her. Her closest friends were there, along with Leo. They had known us since our wedding. Even though Chloe no longer loved me, I was still, on paper, their friend's husband. It was only right that they come to pay their respects. Leo had been in the hospital, faking his illness, but when he heard the news of the crash, he was overcome with joy. With Mr. Sterling in a coma and me dead, it felt like fate was on his side. Marrying Chloe was now a certainty. With that thought, he turned to Chloe as she got out of her car. He put on a somber expression and moved to help her. "Chloe, I'm so sorry for your loss. You still have me." But Chloe walked right past him as if he wasn't there, stumbling up the steps to the house. He watched her go, his outstretched hand falling to his side, a flicker of resentment in his eyes. Suddenly, one of her friends cried out, "Chloe, watch out!" Leo looked up just in time to see Chloe's legs give out on the steps, causing her to fall to her knees. He rushed to help her, but she just shook her head numbly, her eyes blank. "I'm fine," she said. "Leave me alone." Her friends exchanged worried glances. One of them, unable to hold back, said, "Chloe, I know this is sudden, but didn't you say you didn't love him? Now that he's gone, you and Leo can be together." "She's right," another added. "You told us yourself it was an arranged marriage and you had no feelings for him. Why are you letting this destroy you?" Chloe remained kneeling on the steps, her head bowed. After a long silence, they heard her whisper, "No feelings? How could there not be any feelings?" Hearing her say, "No feelings," Leo's eyes lit up. He'd been so focused on her ignoring him that he'd forgotten. She didn't have feelings for me. My death must have just been a shock. That's why she was acting so strangely. He hurried to her side and helped her up. Chloe, you didn't love Ethan. He's gone now. Please don't do this to yourself. It hurts me to see you this way. Something he said must have snapped her out of it. She looked up sharply and shoved him to the ground. Get away from me. Her friends rushed to help Leo, asking Chloe what had gotten into her. But she turned on them too, screaming at them to leave. Get out. All of you, just get out. The heavy front door slammed shut. Inside, Chloe collapsed to her knees, clutching the urn and letting out a raw, animalistic cry. Ethan, how could she not love me? In the last life, and in this one, she had always loved me so deeply. Yes, Chloe had been reborn too. In her past life, after dying in the fire with my body in her arms, she had expected to wake up in hell. Instead, she found herself reborn, back at the very beginning of our marriage. At first, she was overjoyed to see me again. She blamed her own carelessness for letting my first love, Olivia, deceive me, leading to my kidnapping and torture. This time, she vowed, she would protect me and expose Olivia for who she truly was. But when she saw the cold, distant look in my eyes, she realized with a jolt that I hadn't been reborn. I was still the same man who despised her. She couldn't accept it. She had loved me across 2 lifetimes. Why couldn't I just look at her? So, on the advice of a friend, she decided to play my game. She would be cold and distant, too. Her goal was simple: to make me realize what I was missing, to make me understand how much her love meant. If I came to my senses and chose her, they could be happy. If not, she would let me go to Olivia. But reality is often crueler than our plans. She never expected that I had been reborn, too. The moment I held her, crying, telling her how sorry I was, how blind I'd been, and promising to love her forever, she felt like she had won the lottery. She was ecstatic. But then she calmed down and pushed me away. She was afraid it was a trick, that I would say all the right things and then run off with Olivia again just like last time. Even though I swore I had changed, that I didn't love Olivia anymore, she remained cold as ice, determined not to make the same mistake twice. She decided to teach me a lesson, abandoning all her initial plans. Since I was reborn and so eager to make it up to her, she decided to test me to see just how far I would go. So she continued her cruel charade. Fearing she might soften, she even hired an actor, Leo, to play the part of her lover, using him to hurt me again and again. She forced my mother to donate part of her liver, had me tortured with electricity, subjected me to my greatest fear, and even threatened my parents' lives. She saw the love in my eyes slowly die, replaced by a numb emptiness, and it would be a lie to say it didn't scare her. But then she would think, asterisk, he said he loved me. Can't he endure this? Asterisk, the pain she had suffered in our past life was 1,000 times worse. And besides, she thought I had framed Leo and was responsible for her grandfather's condition. So, in the end, she decided to send me away to give me time to reflect. When I was ready, she would bring me back. If I returned, truly sorry and having learned my lesson, she would tell me her secret, that she had been reborn too. Then, they could finally put the past behind them and start over. But her plan was flawed. The unexpected always happens. The plane I was supposed to be on crashed. There were no survivors. At this thought, she slapped herself hard across the face. Why had it turned out like this? She never wanted me to die. If she had known, she never would have sent me away. If she hadn't, would I still be alive, standing right in front of her? It was only then that she realized how wrong she had been. Terribly wrong. When I told her I was reborn and wanted to make it up to her, she should have told me the truth. There were so many ways I could have atoned. Why did she have to choose the cruelest one? Why did she have to provoke me with a fake lover? But her regret came too late. I was dead, not even ashes remaining. She couldn't hold it in any longer and broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. As she cried, she felt a metallic taste in her throat, and then she was coughing up blood. The world went black and she knew no more. Chloe had a long, long dream. In it, she saw me running toward her, my eyes full of love. I pulled her into my arms and kissed her deeply, saying, "Chloe, I love you." As she leaned in to kiss me back, the dream shattered. I turned to dust in her arms, and no matter how she tried to hold on, the ashes slipped through her fingers. "No, don't, Ethan." She woke with a terrified gasp, sitting up in a hospital bed with an 4 in her arm. Leo and her assistant were there, along with a man she didn't recognize. "Miss Sterling, my condolences," the stranger said. "I was Mr. Hayes's divorce attorney." The word divorce made her head snap up. "What did you say?" Leo's eyes, however, lit up at the word. He started to speak, but the assistant, sensing the tension, quickly ushered him out of the room. My lawyer then took the finalized divorce decree from his briefcase. A month ago, Mr. Hayes asked me to handle the divorce proceedings, he explained. He stated he wanted none of the marital assets. He also made me promise that, no matter what, I would deliver this to you. Oh, and he had a message for you. He said, let the past be the past. Take care of yourself. We shouldn't see each other again. With that, the lawyer placed the decree on her nightstand. Her mind went blank. She stared at the document on the nightstand, its dark red cover seeming to glow coldly in the lamplight. After a long moment, she slowly reached for it, then snatched her hand back as if she'd been burned. Their marriage certificate had been a bright, gilded red. This was the color of a scab, the edges rough where the official seal had been pressed. The glass of water on the table began to ripple, and she looked down to see that her hand was shaking. The words divorce decree seemed to burn themselves onto her retinas. Impossible. How could he have divorced her? He had been reborn. He said he was sorry. He said he would love her in this life. Why would he divorce her? Suddenly, she began to doubt everything. Had I really been reborn? Had I ever said those things? Did I ever really love her? Her throat felt tight, as if she'd swallowed a shard of ice that was now cutting her from the inside, the taste of blood filling her mouth. When had I given her the papers? The memory came back in a flash. That day in her office, her assistant had handed her a stack of files. The divorce agreement must have been in there. She had been so focused on Leo, she hadn't even looked. She even remembered the look of relief on my face when I got the signed papers back. How strange she'd thought it was at the time. She hadn't given it a second thought. Now she understood. I had wanted to divorce her even then. The decree fell from her hand onto the nightstand with a sharp crack, making the lawyer jump. In the reflection of the window, she saw her own pale face. Behind her, the closet was half empty. My favorite white shirt was gone. Only an empty hanger remained, swaying slightly in the breeze. Her fingers felt a strange warmth as she flipped the document open. The date of registration, May 23rd, the day of the crash, the day she had handed me the ticket and told me to leave. The moment I was supposed to have boarded that plane, the divorce was finalized. I was gone, and so was our marriage. She had lost me completely. A sharp pain in her palm made her look down. She was clutching the paper so tightly, just as she had clutched my hand in our past life, begging me not to go to Olivia. The taste of rust filled her mouth again as more blood trickled from her lips. Her vision swam, and a sharp ringing filled her ears. The date on the decree echoed in her mind, May 23rd, 2025. She had lost me all over again. 3 days later, she stood in the pouring rain at the cemetery. The divorce decree in her pocket was soaked through, our signatures blurring into nothing. She stared blankly at my picture on the headstone, the events of the funeral replaying in her mind, carrying the urn from the black car, walking the winding path, kneeling to place the box in the ground, and finally, watching as the workers sealed it away from her forever with a layer of concrete. She slowly crouched down, reaching out to touch the cold stone of my grave. Her fingers seemed to pass through time, back to when she was 18. The first time she saw me on campus, she fell in love. From that day on, she was trapped in a secret, unrequited love. She wrote poems for me, played the piano for me in the evenings, and accidentally walked past the basketball court when I was playing. But I never noticed her. I only had eyes for Olivia. She was disappointed, of course, but she didn't give up. When our families arranged our marriage, her dream came true. She vowed to love me with all her heart, but I still only saw Olivia. She tried so hard, but in the end, I ran away with my first love, and we both ended up dead. In this life, we were both reborn. We could have finally understood each other, been happy together. But because of her pride, her need for revenge, she pushed me away, pushed me to the edge, and ultimately, pushed me to my death. The light in her eyes faded, leaving only a dead emptiness. Last time, she had been reborn after dying with me. If she died here at my grave, would it happen again? Could she get another chance to win me back? At the thought, she moved like a puppet, stiffly pulling a small knife from her pocket and raising it to her chest. Just as the tip was about to break the skin, the sharp ringing of her phone shattered the moment. "Miss Sterling, he's awake. Your grandfather is awake," the butler's excited voice cried from the other end of the line. The knife clattered to the wet ground. Forgetting everything else, she raced to the hospital. When she arrived, her grandfather's room was filled with doctors. "It's a miracle," one of the doctors was saying as they finished their examination. After confirming he was stable, they left Chloe alone with him. Her grandfather stared at her for a moment, then asked, "Where's Ethan?" Chloe froze, a fresh wave of grief washing over her. Her grandfather was old. He couldn't handle another shock. She clenched her fists, steadying herself, and told him a partial truth. "After he tried to hurt you, I sent him abroad. When he's ready to admit what he did, I'll bring him home. At her words, her grandfather struggled to sit up. Nonsense, he rasped. Ethan would never hurt me. It was that boy of yours. He broke into a fit of coughing, and Chloe rushed to his side, her eyes wide with shock. What are you talking about? That's impossible. She knew Leo. He was so gentle he wouldn't harm a fly. How could he have tried to kill her grandfather? Her grandfather was furious. If you don't believe me, check the security footage. The security footage. She remembered now. She had wanted to check it after the incident, but Leo had been crying, swearing it wasn't him. And I had a track record. She had believed Leo without a second thought. Now, her grandfather was telling her to check it again, but what was the point? It would still show me as the culprit. And since I was gone, she didn't see the need to dig it all up again. But her grandfather was insistent. I don't care how much you favor that boy. You owe Ethan the truth. If you won't check, I'll do it myself. Seeing how determined he was, Chloe stopped him and went back to the estate to check the footage herself. But the butler informed her that the cameras in that wing had malfunctioned on the day of the incident. She frowned. Something felt wrong. Just then, one of the maids approached her timidly. "Miss Sterling," she whispered, "I have a video." The maid explained that she had gone to close the window in Mr. Sterling's room and had witnessed the whole thing. Terrified, she had hidden in the closet and recorded it on her phone. She had been too afraid to come forward before, afraid Chloe wouldn't believe her and afraid of what Leo might do. But now, with Mr. Sterling awake, she felt safe enough to show it. Chloe took the phone and pressed play. Within seconds, the heart rate monitor on her smartwatch was screaming, her pulse over 120. The video showed her grandfather getting into bed after I had left. A moment later, a man in a white shirt slipped into the room. He turned and it was Leo. But this was not the gentle, sweet Leo she knew. His face was a mask of pure malice. He walked to the bed, grabbed a pillow, and shoved it down on her grandfather's face, hissing, "You old bastard. You think you can stop me from marrying Chloe? You're going to die." The vulgar, hateful words spewing from his mouth were punctuated by the shrill alarm of her smartwatch, a sound that chillingly reminded her of the ambulance siren from that night. The butler summoned Leo. When he arrived, Chloe was sitting on the sofa, her back to the door. On the television screen in front of her, the video of him attacking her grandfather played on a loop. The coffee table was covered with files, evidence of every time he had framed me. She had her assistant gather it all after she learned the truth. She knew he was manipulative, but she never imagined he was capable of this. To think she had hurt me over and over, for this man. A sharp pain shot through her chest. Her watch started beeping again, but she ignored it, sitting as still as a statue, waiting. Before he walked through the door, Leo was ecstatic. After my death, his contract had been terminated, and he'd been kicked out of the house. Chloe's summons had been completely unexpected. He had grown accustomed to a life of luxury. Returning to his old life had been a nightmare. But he hadn't worried. He assumed she was just grieving, acting irrationally. After all, she had hurt me so many times for his sake. He couldn't believe she would really cast him aside. He was sure that, in time, she would welcome him back. And sure enough, not long after, her butler had arrived to bring him back. He was thrilled. He thought she had finally moved on, that she had realized she truly loved him and was ready to give him a permanent place in her life. But when he walked through that door, he found not a dream, but a nightmare. "Explain this," she said, her eyes still fixed on the television. Her voice was colder than the late autumn air. The color drained from Leo's face. "Chloe, that's fake. You have to believe me. I would never do something like that." Even with the evidence right in front of him, he denied it. He knew that admitting it would be the end. He fell back on his usual tactic, kneeling at her feet, his eyes full of tears, reaching for her hand. But she slapped him across the face with a stack of papers, the force of the blow knocking him to the floor. She started to laugh, a cold, sharp sound. She stood and walked toward him, stepping on the scattered papers. "Leo, you were just a boy toy. Where did you get the nerve? No, you weren't even that. You were just an actor." Lightning flashed outside, and in the reflection in the glass, Leo saw himself seeming to melt away. The always put-together man was now a pathetic mess, drowning in a sea of evidence. She slowly knelt down, her hands closing around his throat, squeezing. He could smell her perfume, a scent he had once loved. Now it smelled like death. "I didn't do it," he choked out, still trying to deny it. He struggled to sit up, grabbing at the leg of her pants. "I did everything you asked. I would never." He had been just a normal college student. A woman like Chloe Sterling was someone he only ever saw on television. So when she appeared before him, asking him to play a part, he felt like he'd won the lottery. He agreed without a second thought, ignoring everyone who told him she was just using him. He didn't care. He had been in love with her for years, ever since he first saw her on TV. He had sworn to himself that she was the only woman he would ever marry. Everyone told him he was dreaming, so when the opportunity to get close to her finally presented itself, he grabbed it with both hands. Her request was simple: pretend to be her lover to make me jealous. At first, he did as he was told, but as she treated him better and better, showing him more affection than she ever showed me, his ambition grew. He no longer wanted to be a temporary plaything. He wanted to be her husband, a sterling. At first, he only dared to pull small pranks, little things to frame me. When Chloe didn't react, he grew bolder. He began to set me up in more serious ways, culminating in his attack on her grandfather. His methods weren't sophisticated, but Chloe believed him every time, so he never worried about being caught. With her grandfather, the only witness, in a coma, he thought he was safe. He had been caught so completely off guard that he had no excuse prepared, only denial. He figured if he just kept denying it, she would eventually give up and let it go. But Chloe wasn't a fool. Before, she had let his little schemes slide because she was testing me, and as long as I wasn't seriously hurt, she didn't interfere. She never imagined her inaction would feed his ambition. And during that time, I had grown so numb and distant that I didn't even bother to defend myself, which only fueled her anger and made her less likely to seek the truth. But now she would not let him get away with it. She stood, looming over him like the Grim Reaper, and pronounced his sentence. Since you enjoy framing people so much, you can do it from a prison cell. I'll make sure you're well taken care of there. She emphasized the last two words, and the color drained completely from his face. His hand, which had been clutching her pant leg, fell away. As he began to scream and beg, the sound of sirens cut through the storm, and the house was suddenly filled with police officers. No, please, I only did it because I love you. Chloe, you can't do this to me, he wailed at her silhouetted form. He suddenly remembered another night, under a crystal chandelier just like this one, when she had held his face in her hands and said, "Leo, I will love you forever." Now, she was saying to the police officer in front of her, all the evidence is on the table. As the cold metal of the handcuffs closed around his wrists, he finally accepted his fate. He lowered his head and whispered, "Chloe, these past few months, did you ever love me? Even a little?" The officer pulled him away, his shoes dragging across the expensive rug. "Not at all." The wind carried his final words away as the front door slammed shut. Chloe never looked back. Overnight, the city was in an uproar. No one could have predicted that Chloe Sterling, who had seemed so madly in love with Leo, would so ruthlessly turn on him, not only sending him to prison but also making all his crimes public. Even I saw the news all the way in France. I sat in a cafe under the plane trees, sipping a rose latte and looking out the window. When I first heard about the crash, the one I was supposed to have been on, my first feeling was overwhelming relief. Thank God I hadn't gotten on that plane. I couldn't imagine the pain it would have caused my parents, my family. But I never once considered Chloe's reaction. In my mind, the new Chloe didn't love me. My death wouldn't affect her. She had denied being reborn, denied everything. I couldn't understand why she had changed so much. It wasn't until I was in France, talking with a new friend about my past, that I finally understood. It was probably hatred. Who could love someone who had hurt them so badly, who had cost them their life? After everything she had done to me in this new life, any love I had left for her was well and truly dead. That's why I never contacted the airline to let them know I was alive. There was no one left back home who cared about me. It didn't matter if I was dead or alive. Even if Chloe heard I had died, she wouldn't care. She loved Leo now, not me. Until today. The news was full of her eulogies for me, posted on every social media platform. Every word dripped with love and affection. The screen of my phone glowed in the morning light, and her words were like a rusty knife, prying open a box of memories I had long since sealed shut. A long time ago, when she loved me, she used to write me a letter every day, each one filled with that same deep affection. I was surprised to find her words could still affect me, but it wasn't love I felt. It was irony. I truly don't understand her. Didn't she hate me? Why else would she deny her own rebirth, push me away, and hurt me over and over again with Leo? Now that I'm dead, shouldn't she be happy? Why this sudden display of regret? Does she regret sending me to my death? Or has she suddenly realized, now that I'm gone, that she loved me after all? Whatever her reasons, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I've already given up on her. In her world, I'm dead. It's better this way, with no connection between us. With that thought, I scrolled down and saw another headline that made me pause. Leo charged with assault and attempted murder, taken into custody. The spoon in my hand clattered against the side of my cup, and I realized I was shaking. It wasn't joy or sadness. It was the shock of the truth, like a scab being ripped off an old wound, revealing the raw, unhealed flesh beneath. The memories of all the times he had framed me came flooding back, then slowly receded. I closed my eyes, then opened them again, exited the news app, and turned off my phone, trying to cover the wound back up as if nothing had happened. From the moment I faked my death, Chloe and Leo were no longer my problem. I couldn't get sucked back in. I had to focus on my own life now. I set my phone aside and drained the last of my cold coffee. Just then, my phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Hayes family dinner. I pushed the empty cup away and stood, the movement of my coat dislodging the last leaf from the windowsill. In the reflection in the glass, I saw myself walk calmly out into the sun. As the late autumn dusk settled over the Hayes estate like a blanket of gold silk, my car pulled up to the gate. I got out, a gift in one hand, and tossed my keys to the valet. "Don't park it," I said. "I'm not staying the night." He nodded and drove the car off to the side. I walked up the steps with my gift and pushed open the heavy, carved wooden doors. The crystal chandelier cast a bright light over the dining room. My aunt, the current matriarch of the Hayes family, was just setting the last dish on the table. She heard me and turned with a smile. "Perfect timing. Come sit." I agreed, handing the gift to a nearby servant before going to wash my hands. When I returned, my mother was waiting for me with a bowl of hot, steaming soup. "It's freezing out, and you're barely wearing a coat. Are you trying to get sick?" she asked, her voice full of concern. She didn't let up until I had finished the entire bowl. My aunt smiled at us, nodding in agreement with my mother. "She's right. Put your coat on when you leave. Don't catch a chill." I nodded, and they finally let the subject drop. As the last of the silverware was being set, my grandfather appeared, leaning on his cane. "Let's begin," he announced. At his word, we all began to eat. It was a Hayes family rule that meals were to be eaten in silence, with only the soft clinking of silverware against china. And because of my parents, I was especially careful not to speak out of turn in front of my grandfather. After dinner, my parents were summoned to my grandfather's study. My aunt saw the worry on my face and patted my hand, leading me to a sofa. "Don't worry," she said softly. "He won't be too hard on them. He is their father, after all." Her words eased some of my worry, but I still sighed. Every time we came to the estate, my grandfather would lecture my parents. I had tried to explain to him, over and over, that the failure of my marriage was my fault, not theirs, but he refused to listen. The Hayes family was powerful enough that we never needed an arranged marriage. I only married Chloe because my parents insisted. When my grandfather found out, he was furious. He had always supported my freedom to choose, and had even given his blessing for me to marry Olivia. He flew home immediately to confront my parents, telling them that the Hayes family would never be so desperate as to need an alliance with the Sterlings. But my parents were adamant. The argument went nowhere. My grandfather tried to take me back with him, but my parents refused to let me go. At the time, they were the only ones who knew the real difference between Chloe and Olivia. After that, my grandfather returned to France and washed his hands of our side of the family. And then, of course, we all suffered because of Chloe. When we finally came to France and admitted our mistakes, my grandfather wanted to get revenge on my behalf. But I stopped him. I felt that the pain I had suffered in this life was a fair price for the pain I had caused her in the last one. We were even now. At my urging, he finally relented, but he made us promise never to have any contact with her or her family again. At every family dinner, he brings it up again, warning my parents to be more careful, telling them that while I don't have to marry again, they must never let me be hurt like that again. My parents know they were wrong, so they just take the lecture and apologize. I feel guilty, but they say they deserve it, that if they had just been honest from the beginning, none of this would have happened. That night, at my grandfather's and aunt's insistence, we stayed at the estate. My mother knocked on my door that evening. She had seen the news from home and wanted to know what I was thinking. I told her plainly that there was no future for me and Chloe. As far as anyone back home knew, I was dead, and it was better to keep it that way. I didn't want her finding out I was alive and coming after me. My mother agreed that it was for the best. We talked for a little while longer before she left, telling me to get some sleep. We stayed at the estate for the next few days. I spent my time playing chess with my grandfather and talking with my aunt and mother. It was peaceful. Until one day, when an unexpected guest arrived, the Sterling's butler. After a series of devastating blows, Chloe had fallen gravely ill, and her grandfather had temporarily taken over the family affairs. His first order of business was to send his butler to France with lavish gifts to apologize to my family. After all, my death was her fault. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, only that, for his sake, my family would not seek further retribution against Chloe, as she was already suffering the consequences of her actions. Their arrival was so sudden that I didn't know how to react. My aunt quickly pushed my parents and me into the study, telling us not to come out no matter what we heard. When my aunt went downstairs, the butler was standing by the sofa, bowing to my grandfather and repeating Mr. Sterling's message word for word. My grandfather said nothing, didn't even look at the man. The two of them stood in a tense silence. My aunt walked over, her expression grim. "Mr. Jeeves," she said, "you know you are not welcome here. Why did you come all this way, just to be turned away?" The butler looked even more apologetic. He couldn't argue. He knew they were in the wrong. All he could do was continue to apologize. But my aunt had heard enough. She waved her hand dismissively. "If apologies could bring my nephew back, they might be worth something. Go home and tell the Sterlings that we want nothing more to do with them, ever. You know what our family is capable of." The butler's face went pale, and the words died in his throat. My aunt didn't spare him another glance, simply helping my grandfather to his feet and instructing our own butler to show the man out. The incident didn't affect me much, but it had a significant impact on the Sterlings back home. When their butler repeated my aunt's words, both Chloe and her grandfather went pale. Chloe's feelings were especially complex. If she hadn't been so ill, she would have flown to France herself to kneel at our doorstep. She knew my family hated her, but she never imagined how much. They had cut off all contact, not even returning to visit my grave. She could understand my parents staying away. Seeing my grave would only bring them more pain. But my grandfather had adored me. Even if he was too frail to travel, he could have sent someone in his place. His refusal to do even that struck her as odd, though she couldn't say why. Just then, her grandfather, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. He sighed deeply and looked at Chloe. "When you are well enough, you must go to France yourself. Even if they won't see you, you must kneel outside their home and admit your fault. You were the one who was wrong." His eyes were full of regret as he spoke. If he had known this would be the outcome, he never would have allowed us to marry. Chloe nodded. After helping her grandfather to his room, she came back downstairs. Her assistant was waiting for her. "Ms. Sterling," he said, "Leo is asking to see you." The name took her a moment to place. Since sending him to prison a month ago, she had all but forgotten he existed. Her immediate reaction was to refuse. "Don't ever mention his name to me again," she said coldly. "I don't care if he lives or dies." The assistant looked hesitant, but he said, "It's about Mr. Hayes." At the mention of my name, she stopped. She was silent for a long moment before she spoke again. "Get the car. I'm going to the prison." In the prison visiting room, she stared through the thick glass at the man in the orange jumpsuit. He was thin and sallow, almost unrecognizable. The Leo she remembered was always perfectly groomed, always trying to please her. Seeing him like this, she felt nothing. She cut straight to the point and asked him what he wanted. After more than a month in prison, Leo had learned not to cause trouble. He got straight to the point. "Ethan is alive." The teacup she was holding slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. At the same moment, she felt something inside her crack, like ice breaking. His lips were still moving, but his words were like needles in her temples. She gripped the phone receiver, her knuckles white. The glass partition reflected her face, pale and twisted, like a statue suddenly brought to life. "I brought his ashes home from the airport myself," she said, her voice a cold sneer that couldn't quite hide the tremor running through it. "I signed the death certificate. How dare you say he's alive?" In contrast to her shock, Leo was calm. "I have a friend who works at the airport. He visited me last week. He told me that on the day of the crash, a man with the same name as Ethan, a man who looked exactly like him, bought 3 tickets to France. With the guard's permission, he held up a printed photograph his friend had taken. There on the paper was my face, staring back at her. Her pupils contracted. She couldn't be mistaken. She had been my wife in 2 lifetimes. She knew my face better than anyone. It was him. It was Ethan. She couldn't stay seated a moment longer. She shot to her feet and ran from the prison. As she sped toward the airport, she called her assistant. "Book me a flight to France," she commanded. "Right now." She had to find me, to ask me why I had faked my death. If I loved her, why hadn't I come back? She had to tell me how much she missed me, how much she loved me, how sorry she was. She had to win me back. They had to start over. The plane descended through the clouds and landed in France. A light rain was falling in Paris as she hurried through the streets under an umbrella. She had intended to go straight to my family's home, but her grandfather called just as she landed. He didn't know I was alive. He thought she was there to apologize and reminded her to bring a gift. She thought about it and decided he was right. After everything she had done, she couldn't just show up empty-handed. So she had the driver take her to one of the high-end shopping districts to find me a gift. As she stepped out of a boutique, a gust of wind nearly tore the umbrella from her hand. And then she saw him. 10 meters away, under a plane tree, a man was closing his umbrella. He was wearing the same coat I had been wearing the last time she saw me. The shopping bag slipped from her fingers, a bottle of expensive perfume shattering on the pavement. The scent filled the air, and suddenly she was back at the airport 3 months ago, the air thick with grief, the weight of the urn in her arms, the raw sound of her own sorrow. And now here he was, the curve of his turn, even the distinct shape of his wrist bone, was perfectly clear in the rain. Ethan, a screech of brakes tore through the curtain of rain. Chloe stumbled back, the cold rain running down her chin and into her collar. Across the street, the corner of a gray coat was disappearing into the subway entrance. She shoved past a pedestrian holding a hot coffee, the blue light of a digital screen exploding in her vision as the escalator carried an endless stream of blurred faces toward her. She scanned the crowd frantically, the hope in her eyes beginning to fade. Just as she was about to give up, a flash of white caught her eye at the top of the escalator. A man's pale fingers were resting on the handle of a black umbrella, a single detail that lit up the darkness in her world. She fought her way through the crowd and finally saw my face. The station lights cast a halo around my hair, and my eyes were as bright as she remembered. A gust of wind from an arriving train whipped at her coat, and as the automated voice announced the stop, I stepped onto the train. She moved to follow, but the warning chime sounded, and the doors slid shut right in front of her. The train roared away, taking all her thoughts with it. She stood frozen on the platform, like a statue, long after it was gone. But inside, her heart, which had been a barren wasteland, suddenly burst into bloom. She could feel it beating again, truly beating, for the first time in months. She hadn't caught me, but she was still ecstatic. Before, she had harbored doubts about what Leo had told her. Now she knew it was true. Ethan was alive. He was actually alive. He wasn't dead. She ran from the station and jumped into her waiting car. "To the Hayes estate," she told the driver. "Hurry." Meanwhile, on the train, my face was pale, my hands clenched into fists. I had heard it, a voice I knew all too well. It was the same voice I'd heard as I died in my past life, the same one I'd heard after the car crash. The voice I always heard when I was in danger. But I didn't want to hear it now. We were finished. I had no desire to ever see her again. I didn't know how she found out I was alive, but her being here was a disaster. I immediately called my aunt at the estate. "Auntie, Chloe's here. She knows I'm alive." I had only come out to meet a friend, and she had seen me. If I had known, I would have just stayed at the estate. My aunt's breath caught on the other end of the line. "Don't worry," she said finally. "I'm here. I won't let her find you." "Okay," I said. "I won't come back to the house for a few days. Can you let my parents and grandfather know?" Now that I'd been seen, I couldn't stay in Paris. My aunt told me to be safe and hung up. I got off at the next stop and took a cab straight to the airport. "Hello," I said to the agent. "I need a ticket to the United States." Soon, I was at the gate with my ticket. Meanwhile, Chloe's car had arrived at the Hayes estate, and she was rushing to the door. The Hayes family received Chloe with the same coldness they had shown her butler. "Chloe, if you're going to lie, at least make it believable," my aunt said, taking a sip of her tea, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You claim Ethan is alive, that you saw him in the Paris metro with your own eyes. Where is your proof?" Chloe's expression faltered. In her haste, she had forgotten to take a picture. But then she remembered the photo Leo had given her. "Believe it or not, Ethan is alive. That is a fact," she said, handing the photograph to my aunt. The photo showed my parents and me sitting in an airport terminal. The morning light hit my face, and my parents were on either side of me, all of us smiling and talking. But my aunt was unmoved. "Miss Sterling, I don't know why you're so obsessed with this idea, but that is not Ethan in the photograph. Besides, I was under the impression you didn't love him." The words caught in Chloe's throat. What could she say? That we had both been reborn? They would think she was insane. After a long pause, she finally said, "Ethan and I had our misunderstandings, but please, you have to believe me. I do love him." My aunt laughed coldly. "If you really loved him, why did you hurt him so many times? Look into your heart and ask yourself if any of that was love." "No, that's not it," she stammered. "At first, I thought I didn't love him. That's why I did those things. By the time I realized I did, and I wanted to make it up to him, he was already..." "Chloe, if Ethan didn't love you, he never would have married you. After you took a lover, we called him. We told him to divorce you and come home to France. But he refused. He said he wasn't ready to give up on you, that he wanted to give you another chance. You wasted the chances he gave you. Now he's gone. You need to stop torturing yourself and stop harassing our family. If you miss him, visit his grave. Don't come here with these ridiculous stories." My aunt finished speaking, then turned and closed the door, walking back into the estate. Chloe started to follow, but the heavy gate blocked her path. She watched my aunt's retreating figure for a long time, her hands slowly clenching into fists. She couldn't have been wrong. That was Ethan. She didn't understand why I wouldn't see her, why my family was lying for me. But it didn't matter. She could wait. She believed that if she waited long enough, I would eventually show myself. It was just like in high school, when she had waited by the basketball court every day for a month until my roommate finally dragged me there to play. For the next several days, Chloe waited outside the Hayes estate. She waited from sunset to sunrise, through sunny afternoons and cold, rainy nights. She waited day after day, the hope in her eyes slowly fading. Just when she was about to give up, a familiar figure appeared before her. "Ethan!" she cried, her eyes lighting up. She threw open her car door and ran to him, grabbing his hand and pulling him into a fierce hug. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Ethan, I finally found you. Do you have any idea how much I've missed you? I was going out of my mind. I really thought you were dead. Thank God you're all right." There were a million things she wanted to say, but all that came out was, "I missed you so much." But the man in her arms pulled back and looked at her, his expression one of pure confusion. "Who are you?" he asked. She stared at him, her face etched with panic. "Ethan, it's me, Chloe, your wife." The man had no patience for her explanation. He shoved her away. "Are you crazy? Stop grabbing me and yelling." Just then, the Hayes family butler rushed out and bowed respectfully to the man. "Master Aaron, welcome back." The man shot the butler an annoyed look. "What is wrong with you people? Why is this woman here? She scared the hell out of me." The butler's expression hardened. He stepped in front of the young man, shielding him. "Miss Sterling, I must ask you to leave now, or I will be forced to call security." But Chloe seemed not to hear him, trying desperately to get past him to the man. "Ethan, it's me. Don't you recognize me?" Before the man could answer, the butler cut in. "Miss Sterling, you are mistaken. This is not Ethan. This is Aaron Hayes, his cousin." The words hit her like a physical blow, making her head ring. What did you say?" The butler sighed at her confusion. "Master Aaron and Master Ethan are cousins. They look so much alike they're often mistaken for twins. The man you saw in the photograph, the one at the airport with Ethan's parents? That was also Master Aaron. After you sent Ethan away, he was worried about his parents, so he asked his cousin to escort them here. I understand your grief is profound, Miss Sterling, but you are mistaken. No, it's him. He's Ethan," she insisted, pushing past the butler. "He has a scar on his wrist, from when he saved me." She reached for the man's arm, trying to pull up his sleeve to reveal the proof. A sharp slap echoed in the air. Aaron had slapped her hand away. He pointed a finger in her face. "Are you insane? If you can't tell people apart, go see a doctor. Don't stand here harassing me." "Butler, what are you waiting for? Get her out of here." At his command, a group of bodyguards emerged and began to drag Chloe away. She struggled against them, her eyes filled with desperate disbelief. Aaron watched coldly as the bodyguards dragged her away. Then he pulled out his phone and called me. When he told me she was gone, I thanked him. "I really appreciate you doing this for me." I had hoped my aunt's words would convince her I was really dead and that she would finally leave me alone. But I hadn't counted on her persistence, her waiting outside the estate for days. I had no choice but to ask my cousin, Aaron, to impersonate me, to make her believe that the man she saw was him, not me. It seemed to have worked. For the next few days, there was no sign of her. In a rented villa in Paris, Chloe stared at the file in front of her, her face growing paler by the second. How could she have been so wrong? It had only been a glimpse, but she had been so certain it was me. How could it have been someone else? Had I really died in that crash after all? Was this all just a figment of her grief-stricken imagination? The light in her eyes began to dim. Just then, a knock came at her study door. "Ms. Sterling," her temporary butler said, "you have a visitor." She frowned. She didn't know anyone in France. Who could possibly be visiting her? But as she descended the stairs and saw the familiar figure sitting on the sofa, she thought she must be dreaming. Hearing her approach, the man on the sofa stood and turned to face her. For a moment, she laughed at herself. Of course, it was a hallucination. The man standing before her was Aaron Hayes. Seeing her, Aaron stood. "Miss Sterling," he said, "I apologize for our last encounter. I wasn't aware of the full situation." Chloe shook her head. "No, I was the one who behaved inappropriately. I should be apologizing to you." After a brief, polite exchange, she asked him why he had come. His expression turned serious. "My cousin Ethan, before he died, he sent me an audio message, a sort of last will. It contains a message for you." He paused, gauging her reaction. "Would you like to hear it?" She stood frozen, then gave a stiff nod. He took out his phone and played the recording. After a moment of static, a familiar voice filled the room. a voice she hadn't heard in what felt like a lifetime. Chloe, by the time you hear this, I'll be gone. I know you were reborn, too. I don't know why you wouldn't admit it, why you hurt me over and over. It made me wonder if the you who loved me in our last life was ever real. But it doesn't matter anymore. I'm dying. I let out a soft laugh, a sound of relief and release. In our last life, I was the one who wronged you. I was selfish and I didn't love you, and I hurt you terribly. I deserved what happened to me. This time, I wanted to make it up to you, to love you properly, but you didn't seem to want that. It's okay. Consider the pain you caused me in this life as my atonement for the last one. We're even now, Chloe. Live a good life. Don't be held back by me. And if there is a next life, let's not meet again. We were never meant to be. The recording ended, but the silence that followed stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Chloe spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Can you send me a copy of that? Aaron looked surprised for a moment, then nodded. Before he left, she used his phone to record a message in reply, as if speaking to me in heaven. Live a good life. Don't be held back by me. We were never meant to be. Not meant to be. We loved each other so much, yet we kept missing our chance. Again and again. Maybe he was right. Maybe we really weren't. At the thought, a sharp pain shot through her right hand. She looked down to see her nails had dug into her palm, drawing beads of blood that dripped onto the tile floor like dark rose petals. The sound of the rain outside suddenly became deafening. A cold dampness seeped in through a crack in the window, wrapping around her like a clammy hand from the grave, squeezing her until she shattered. And in every broken piece, she saw me, playing basketball in high school, waiting for her in a suit at our wedding, holding her and crying after we were reborn, and finally, my back to her, my eyes empty, as I walked away at the airport. Ethan, I can't, she whispered to the empty room. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw me. How was she supposed to live without me? She slowly set the phone down and buried her face in her arms. As a clap of thunder tore through the night, a sob finally escaped her throat, the sound of a caged animal being strangled. The rain poured all night. As the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, it finally stopped. A single drop of water fell from a leaf on the plane tree outside, landing in her dry, tearless eye. As Chloe's plane flew back through the clouds, I listened to the message she had recorded, which Aaron had sent to me. Her voice was filled with a profound sadness. Ethan, I don't know if you can hear this, wherever you are, but I have to say I'm sorry. I was reborn, and I did still love you. I was just bitter. I had loved you for so long, and you never once looked my way. At first, I was just trying to make you see what you were missing, to make you come to me. But then you were reborn too, and you swore you would love me. So I thought, fine, let's see how much you love me. That's why I kept hurting you. Leo wasn't my lover. He was just an actor I hired. I never imagined he would do those things to you. That's why I sent him to prison. He'll stay there for the rest of his life. You told me to forget you and live a good life, but I can't. I thought about dying, just to be with you, but I was afraid you wouldn't want me. So I'm going to live. I'm going to atone for what I did. I'll take care of your parents, your friends, the roses in your garden, and your grandfather. And when I'm done, when I've set everything right, I'll come find you. I hope, then you'll give me a chance to make it up to you. Ethan, I love you, and I'm so sorry. If there is a next life, I hope we don't meet. With a soft click, I turned off the screen. My heart was a tangle of emotions, and I felt a sting in my nose. I wiped a tear from the corner of my eye and told myself, again and again, that this was for the best. Our meeting had been a mistake. This being apart and at peace was the best ending we could hope for. Chloe, I will grant your wish. I will never see you again. It's better for us to be on our own, and we will never meet again.